Are psychic powers real? Equinox examines the apparent mysteries of psychics past and present.
Kate, Maggie?
Victorian mediums asked us to believe that spirits produced miraculous phenomena in the seance room. In this century, many have claimed powers of telepathy, or the ability to influence objects with nothing more than the power of their minds.
If somebody could genuinely demonstrate thought transfer and psychokinesis, that you could move objects by the power of thought, that would be bringing to light an entire new field of physics. And you get a Nobel Prize for that.
The powers do not exist. And I say that both from the point of view of hands-on experience in testing many, many people, and also from the point of view of science.
Nothing has been found. Anecdotal stories, all kinds of almost proofs. But that's like being almost pregnant. It doesn't count.
But a significant number of people believe that psychic powers do exist. Television programs such as Beyond Belief claim to investigate the paranormal. But are they just exploiting our appetite for supernatural wonders?
And this is not an illusion. The metal is giving away and there is no heat produced.
And if the baffling phenomena such as spoon bending presented on these shows are not psychic, how can they be explained?
It's one of the few occasions when the phrase "it's getting softer" is good news.
Yeah, look at it. It's almost, look at it. It's there.
Tonight, Equinox explores the secrets of the psychics.
Am I going to move house during the next year? News to me.
At the Metaphysical and Psychic Research Society, a group of psychic healers are conducting a table-turning session.
Am I going to move within 5 miles?
The movements of the table indicate answers to questions.
Greetings, friends of mystery and wonder. I present today's podcast, Secrets of the Psychics. Some of you will marvel at the wonders of the potential powers of the human mind. Yet still more will feel warm with the remembrance of incidents and reports of people and events they've read about and seen many times. All the classics are here. The toe-joint cracking sisters, Harry Houdini, the Amazing Randi and his pal Uri Geller, and even a whippersnapper version of Richard Dawkins. So clear your minds while you listen to Secrets of the Psychics.
his mama needs. Ooh, bubbly bop. Ooh, bubbly bop. Ooh, lovely, lovely, lovely, lovely bop.
Within 10 miles.
Clockwise for yes and anti-clockwise for no.
You notice the fingers are sliding across the table and not pushing the table at all.
Well, if we tried to push it, it would stop and it wouldn't work.
I might be a grandmother by next year.
Hello, Granny. The table moves by kinetic energy, which is produced by the whole group. It's a form of energy, a mental energy. All kinetic energy stems from the brain itself.
The group gathers for both public healing sessions and for private meetings like this one. As well as turning tables, they also sit together in this room in the dark to contact the spirit world.
The meeting is a serious meeting to study and develop both the healing abilities and our psychic abilities.
First of all, we just come together, our thoughts become collective, and very gradually the consciousness is relaxed. It becomes very relaxed. And sometimes a person can see things in front of them, sense things in front of them. You can't say you consciously sense them, but you psychically sense them.
In the main, most of the contact we have are spirits that of our ancestors that have been in different incarnations, but they are genetically connected.
We call them spirit companions because they do come and teach us a lot of things. There was one person that came to us some while ago, and his name was Eddie Burkett.
Oh, yeah.
And Eddie was a woodsman, and what he does, he comes and teaches us about herbs, what mushrooms grow up trees, and what flowers to pick for certain healing, for curative effects.
I think one of the other phenomena that is amazing is when you feel a solid object which you know isn't a material object. For example, as I felt the other week, a dog, which totally surprised me.
Oh, well, basically it is a spirit dog that's been coming now for a little while.
Norman's group sincerely believe that they have direct contact with the spirit world. Yet most observers over the years have been skeptical that such communication exists because of the lack of scientific evidence.
It happened in Monterey a long time ago. I met him in Monterey in old Mexico. Stars and steel guitars and luscious lips as red as wine. I'm afraid that it was mine. It happened in Monterey without thinking twice. I left him and threw away the key to paradise. My indiscreet heart longs for the sweetheart that I left in old Monterey. It happened in Monterey a long time ago. I met him in Monterey in old Mexico. Stars and steel guitars and luscious lips as red as wine broke somebody's heart, and I'm afraid that it was mine. It happened in Monterey without thinking twice. I left him and threw away the key to paradise. My indiscreet heart longs for the sweetheart that I left behind me. In a little Spanish town, 'twas on a night like this, when he held me in his arms and gave me my first kiss. My indiscreet heart longs for the sweetheart that I left in old Monterey.
wasn't until the last century that anyone tried communicating with the dead through mediums and dark seances. This became known as spiritualism. It was started almost by accident only 150 years ago in the little town of Hydesville, New York, by two young girls. They were called Kate and Maggie Fox, and they weren't in touch with spirits. They were playing tricks in the dark. They made rapping noises by bouncing fruit on a string and cracking their toe joints on the bedboards.
Kate? Maggie?
The house was supposed to be haunted, and Mrs. Fox thought that the strange phenomena might be communications from the other side.
The mother took it very seriously, since the telegraph had just been invented, and there was talk about a spiritual telegraph.
Girls, are you awake? We heard noises.
Was it you girls?
No, Papa.
When news leaked out, the Foxes' house was besieged by people fascinated by the possibility of communicating with the dead. Led on by their elder sister, who quickly saw where a buck was to be made, Kate and Maggie began their careers as the first spirit mediums. To begin with, the spirits would rap twice for yes and once for no. Then they learned to spell.
They would sometimes recite the alphabet, A, B, C, and go through the whole alphabet to wait till a rap came. Let's say it came at B. Then they'd start again, go through the alphabet, and another rap, and then they record that next letter. Believe it or not, people even try to write whole books this way. That's a long, drawn-out way of doing it.
Gradually, the spirits became more sophisticated, spelling out words by guiding the hands of sitters at seances, or answering questions by tipping a table this way or that. The great British scientist Michael Faraday discovered that this was not the work of spirits, but of unconscious muscular movements, now known as ideomotor action.
You place your fingers on the edge of the table. Without realizing it, you can be pushing, you can be pulling in different directions. Only very small forces, but enough to move a glass or perhaps make a table tilt.
There are angels hovering.
The faithful, however, took such wonders as evidence that they were in touch with those in the afterlife, as spiritualism grew into a mass religion.
Angels, angels hovering around.
Only 2 years after the Fox sisters first heard the rappings, in 1850, there were more than 100 mediums in New York City, and there were 50 spiritualist circles in Philadelphia. And a decade after that, there were millions of believers in America and also in Europe.
So you want to be a rock and roll star, so grab yourself an electric guitar and learn how to play. You can see I don't know how to play this guitar. I'm just, just playing it, I don't think I'll ever be able to learn how unless maybe Frank Zappa teaches me or Bob Dylan. But they're always busy, people like Bob Dylan and Frank Zappa. I mean, they got too many things to do. I'll learn how eventually, if I can find a teacher who's, who can take on a nervous person. I think I can learn how to play. I don't know if you'd be willing to teach me, simply because I'm very jumpy sometimes. I break guitars sometimes. I broke my cousin. I think I broke my cousin's guitar, but I'm not sure. I didn't mean to. I just. You see, the engineer is getting nervous. I'm recording. He's getting nervous back there. He's afraid I'm going to break his guitar. But Frank Zappa, he ain't worried about it, because if I do break the guitar, it just comes out of my paycheck, and I pay for the guitar. Yeah. Excuse me. I left my shoes out there, and I'm barefooted in here. I don't want to catch any kind of sickness. I don't want to die young. I am a very young man. I'm only 23 years old. I'm 6'1". I got curly hair. I got brown eyes. I have to admit, I don't look like Jim Morrison. I mean, every time he gets up on there, girls go crazy. But I don't think they're going to go crazy over me. Unless they're, I like girls. Believe me, I like girls. But I'm not going to say I'm no Jim Morrison. I'm not going to say I'm no John Lennon. I'm not going to say I'm like the Monkees neither. I'm a believer. Some people say I make a pretty good musician. But I've always argued, that's going to take me a long time out of this thing. How's it sound? You like it? I might be a good musician yet. Wouldn't it really surprise you if I played as good as Mike Bloomfield or Eric Clapton or, you know? Wouldn't it really surprise you? You know, anything's possible, you know. You don't know what I'm going to do once I start learning how to play guitars. I might be able to make them go up and down and turn it around, you know. Go up, around. Now, experiment now. Here's a song called Sunshine of Your Life. Jumpin' Jack Flash. Jumpin' Jack Flash is such a gas. I'm in my beginning stages now. Jumpin' Jack Flash is such a gas. Woo! This guitar, I hope I don't break it. It's only, don't forget, I'm just starting out on a regular everyday guitar. But one of these days I'll get one of those big amplifiers, you know. Could you picture me with a big amplifier going?
The medium took centre stage, a rare job opportunity for women at the time. The spirits now began to speak, perhaps through a spirit trumpet, and to produce ever more unlikely phenomena.
What we're talking about here is mystical stuff. I mean, immortality, life after death. And what was produced was, you know, trumpets blowing, mouth organs and tables lifting. I mean, you know, crass bass stuff.
Is that you, John?
The skills of the medium had less to do with conjuring spirits than conjuring tricks.
People had great reaching rods. They had sort of telescopic rods in which they could jingle bells at many yards distance. They had lengths of cotton set up. You know, they had the consulting rooms arranged for trickery.
I am here. Do you have a message for anyone here, John? I have a message from Beatrice.
Yes, my Beatrice.
I love you, Alfred. Take care.
To the vast majority of the people who went to these seances, the one thing that they wanted above all else was to be able to believe that there really was life after death, that they really would be able to get in touch with their departed loved ones. And so this incredibly flimsy evidence would actually be taken as being very, very strong proof by these people.
For the mediums, it was a lucrative business. But to keep the faithful interested, they, or rather the spirits, had to learn new tricks. Messages from beyond now began to arrive, in writing. And the most celebrated spirit-writing medium was an American, Henry Slade.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Slade arrived in London in 1876, hoping to exploit a rich new market with the proof he claimed to offer of communication with the dead. Some were skeptical.
You have a question?
2 young medical students set out to expose him.
Keep it in your mind.
Slade's speciality was producing spirit messages on slates of the kind that children would work on at school. He would first show that the slates were blank.
Place your hands upon the slate.
Mysterious sounds of writing would be heard, and then, as if by divine means, a message would appear, supposedly from the spirit of Slade's late wife.
I'm looking over a four-leaf clover that I overlooked before. One leaf is sunshine, the second is rain, third is the roses that grow in the lane. No need explaining, the one remaining is somebody I adore. I'm looking over a four-leaf clover that I overlooked, I said that I overlooked before.
Slade was arrested for fraud, and his trial at the Old Bailey was the talk of London for some weeks. He narrowly escaped jail, but his case had revealed deep divisions among scientists over the authenticity of spiritualism. Charles Darwin contributed the substantial sum of £10 towards the prosecution. But Alfred Russel Wallace, who had developed the theory of evolution alongside Darwin, was a key witness for Slade's defence. It was a perfect example of the clash between science and religion in the late 19th century.
When Darwin came along with his radical theory of survival of the fittest and evolution, that was rather a blow to the religionists. Of course, they felt that their belief in the literal truth of the Bible was being challenged, and indeed it was.
So they gave up their religion, but they wanted something else in its place. They were looking for something that's more consistent with the new scientism, as it was called at that time. And when spiritualism came along, and a spiritualist said, look, we don't ask you to believe on faith anymore. We're going to give you scientific evidence. We're going to give material proof.
Mediums were quick to supply the evidence that the scientists were looking for in the form of a mysterious new substance from the spirit realm.
It was called ectoplasm. It was a very good and scientific sounding word, and everybody embraced it immediately.
And this was a time when the most extraordinary scientific opening up, if you like, was going on. The Curies were discovering radioactivity, and Roentgen had just discovered X-rays. But I mean, if you can have X-rays, why not ectoplasm? A much less worrying sort of phenomenon.
But I think the vast majority of the people in science at that time were quite receptive. I mean, you look back, Barrett, Brooks, William James, all these people who were progressive thinkers at the time, you know, dabbled in these areas. Some of them, like H.G. Wells and others, dabbled even in occultism. This was much more respectable in those days. And it was really considered a more secular way of seeing these phenomena.
Ectoplasm bore a striking resemblance to muslin.
Now, boys were made for girls, and girls were made for boys, made to share each other's cares and joys, and life without a mate is like an empty plate. And what did Adam say before he met his fate? There ain't no sense sitting on the fence all by yourself in the moonlight. There ain't no thrill by the watermill all by yourself in the moonlight. There ain't no fun sitting beneath the trees, giving yourself a hug, giving yourself a squeeze. Love's a farce sitting on the grass all by yourself in the moonlight. Now he's must have their she's and she's must have their he's, otherwise there'd be no family trees. Why, even in the zoos they keep them there in twos, otherwise there'd be no little kangaroos. There ain't no sense sitting on a fence, all by yourself in the moonlight. There ain't no thrill by the watermill, all by yourself in the moonlight. There ain't no fun sitting beneath the trees, giving yourself a hug, giving yourself a squeeze. It's insane swinging down the lane, all by yourself in the moonlight. Now it gets your goat, riding in the boat, all by yourself in the moonlight. And it's all a fake, swimming in a lake, all by yourself in the moonlight. Now it don't make sense, sitting upon the sands, whispering to yourself, ain't the scenery grand? There ain't no vim when you go to swim, all by yourself in the moonlight. Lies to the butterflies, all by yourself in the moonlight. And you'll agree that you're poor company, all by yourself in the moonlight. When you're alone, it doesn't bring delight, kissing yourself hello, kissing yourself good night, and there ain't no kick, gosh, it makes you ill, all by yourself in the moonlight. Now there ain't no sense sitting on the fence,
all by yourself in the moonlight.
And there ain't no thrill by the watermill,
all by yourself in the moonlight.
There ain't no fun sitting beneath the trees, giving yourself a hug, giving yourself a squeeze. Love's a farce sitting on the grass.
Hurrah!
I beg your pardon, gentlemen. Granted. All by yourself in the moonlight.
It tended to appear only after the medium had been out of sight for a while in a so-called spirit cabinet, a convenient curtain or screen behind which to prepare such spirit phenomena. The term ectoplasm had been coined by the Nobel Prize-winning physiologist Charles Richet. His star subject was the flamboyant medium Eusapia Palladino. Richet conducted an investigation of Eusapia at his cottage in the south of France. He was convinced that Eusapia's phenomena were produced by spirit hands formed from ectoplasm. This contrasted with the theory of a famous Italian scientist who was sure that the phenomena emanated from pure sex energy and were even accompanied by orgasms.
She would moil and toil and groan, and finally some physical manifestation would take place. Tables would rise, bells would ring, melons would be thrown. I mean, you name it, she did it.
Richet persisted in his theory that these effects were produced by ectoplasmic hands, though they seemed human enough, and they could feel painfully real.
Palladino was very well known for being able to skillfully substitute one hand or one foot for another. So she would ask investigators on either side of her to hold on to her hands, to place their feet on top of her feet so they had control of her.
But in the semi-darkness, she was able to free one of her hands to do its spirit business, while the sitters were convinced they had control of both of them. Eusapia was just as good at slipping a foot out of this so-called control. She had her own table made from light wood, which she could lift by getting a foot under the table's leg, and she was frequently exposed in such trickery. Other effects might be produced by an accomplice. But Richet couldn't believe that such an ill-educated woman could be deceiving him.
The believers are so purposely blind when they want to be. They believed in Palladino because she was an ignorant Italian peasant, and that's an expression they used frequently. She was a very cunning Italian peasant.
Lots of the early investigators of paranormal claims felt that just because they were eminent scientists, they couldn't be fooled. They were professional observers, they couldn't be fooled. Lots of conjurers will actually argue that they are easier to fool than children because of the logical way in which they think, because of the sequential nature of their thought processes.
I even swung out with
Having produced ectoplasmic body parts, mediums then tried full-form materializations. These pictures of the medium Eva Carrière were probably more convincing in the early, innocent days of photography than they are today.
She produced quite a number of heads, which are clearly folded and flat. She also produced a full-form materialization that she called Dorsmika, which had a rather neat little black beard and specs and a sort of lab coat. And he too is extremely flat.
Eva often performed in the nude, which perhaps distracted from Dorsmika's flatness. His face was later shown to be a magazine photograph of the King of Bulgaria. Before long, materializations became much more lifelike. Once inside her cabinet, the medium would apparently be securely tied and go into a trance. After a while, a spirit would emerge. It moved, it breathed. It might even give you a kiss or shake hands. In fact, it looked for all the world like someone dressed up as a ghost. But the faithful wanted to believe that the spirits were genuine.
It looked like a ghost, it talked like a ghost, or a dead relative, you know. It seemed reasonable to think it might be a dead relative.
There were occasions when the spirit form was grabbed and indeed identified as the medium. What would typically happen then is that the other sitters would take great exception to the fact that the spirit had been grabbed. This was definitely not the thing to do in a Victorian séance. It was against the rules. And it was even alleged that this would actually kill the medium, which in fact it never did. But the spirit form would then be hustled back behind the curtain, and then 5 minutes later the somewhat dishevelled medium would apparently come out of her trance and claim to have no knowledge of what had taken place.
With one exception, all practicing mediums were exposed as frauds, or else quite often confessed.
This diminished neither the popularity of spiritualism nor the controversy over its supernatural claims. So Scientific American magazine decided to put an end to the debate once and for all. They offered a $5,000 prize to anyone who could prove a genuine psychic phenomenon. But it takes a trickster to spot a trickster, and to win the prize, mediums would have to convince the greatest illusionist and skeptic of them all, Harry Houdini.
I see your wishes on the wall, and that's alright with me. I see you run to make a call, hoping that the someone free. Your life and my life, they don't touch at all. That's no way to be. It never seems so far. I could almost see your face tonight, singing simple rhythm and blues.
When Scientific American magazine offered a $5,000 prize to anyone who could prove a genuine psychic phenomenon, a well-to-do doctor's wife from Boston, Massachusetts, came very close to winning it. Marjorie Crandon claimed to be in touch with the spirit of her dead brother, Walter, who could apparently make objects fly around the room and even ring an electric bell.
If you're here with us, Walter, ring the bell.
Marjorie's charming middle-class persona masked one of the cleverest and most manipulative mediums of her age. When Houdini arrived to investigate for Scientific American, Marjorie realized that her reputation was on the line.
Walter, the famous Houdini is here. He's here in the room with us. He's right beside me, Walter. Walter, ring the bell for him.
Over a long career, Marjorie Crandon produced some of the most extraordinary seance phenomena ever witnessed, from pure ectoplasm to weird spirit hands. Houdini later explained how he had placed the box containing the electric bell that Walter liked to ring beneath his chair.
Ring for him. Ring.
He had also bound up his lower leg for several hours before the seance to make it sensitive.
Press your leg hard against mine so that you can tell that it's still there.
Very well.
Closer.
Sure enough, Houdini felt Marjorie's leg slipping past his.
Listen, Houdini. I have a message. Have Mr. Bird fetch me pencil and slate. More control! Now you have both my hands and both my feet! The megaphone is in the air. Have Houdini tell me where to throw it.
Towards me. Okay, here we are. Perhaps we could arrange the seats the way they were yesterday, please.
Having discovered how Marjorie rang the electric bell, Houdini sneaked back into the seance room the following day to see if he could work out how Marjorie had done her other tricks.
How she managed to get the cabinet to go
Starting with the toppling spirit cabinet.
Of course, it would be easier to do if you had both hands free.
Yeah, but you had hold of one of her hands.
Exactly. I had hold of one of her hands. Mr. Bird had hold of the other. But then Mr. Bird had to leave the room at one point, which meant that she had her other hand free.
Gece gündüz içiyorum aşkından. Bakışların hiç çıkmıyor aklımdan. Gözlerinle beni deli edersin. Söyle canım neden böyle üzersin? Gözlerinle beni deli edersin. Söyle canım neden böyle üzersin? Herkes benim bu halime ne desin? Kimsem yok ki dertlerimi dinlesin. Seviyordum niye kaçtın yanlarımdan? İçiyorum sarhoş oldum aşkından. Seviyordum niye kaçtın yanımdan? İçiyorum sarhoş oldum aşkından. Bu ayrılık daha uzun sürmesin. Yeter artık sen bana dönmelisin. Herkes benim bu halime ne desin? Kimsem yok ki dertlerimi dinlesin. Herkes benim bu halime ne desin? Kimsem yok ki dertlerimi dinlesin. Kimsem yok ki dertlerimi dinlesin. Kimsem yok ki dertlerimi dinlesin. Kimsem yok ki dertlerimi dinlesin.
We also have to establish how this came to be on the floor beneath my feet. Now, it was not possible for her to throw it on the floor because by the time it hit the floor...
You had hold of both of her hands.
Exactly. So this is how I think she did it. The megaphone was somewhere hereabouts on the floor. Let's say it was just here, yes? She has one free hand, but she also has one free foot, yes? She tips the cabinet back with her hand and places her foot underneath the cabinet. Then she takes hold of the megaphone and places it on her head. Makes me look like a dunce, yeah? Then she gives me both her hands. At this point, she flicks the cabinet over with her foot. Yeah. Then she brings both feet round, so I have both her feet with my foot and both hands in my hand. Brilliant, isn't it?
Marjorie, you know, was a fraud. There's no doubt about it. Anyway, she didn't win the $5,000.
The tricks of the early mediums seem so obvious 100 years after the fact. Could anyone be fooled today?
Take your seat. Thanks so much.
This footage is of an experimental seance conducted in 1997 by Dr. Richard Wiseman of the University of Hertfordshire with a group of open-minded volunteers.
Sylvia, Claire. Okay.
The hands and ankles of the actor who is playing the part of the medium are first tied to his chair by the sitters themselves.
Claire, if I can ask you just to do that. Excellent.
On the table there is a selection of typical spiritualist paraphernalia, including a rattle,
Exactly the same, Anna.
a bell, a megaphone, and an accordion.
This is an experiment. I'll let Richard leave. We are going to be plunged in a minute when I give the signal into total darkness. But once it goes dark, we're going to try and focus our energy and move the objects. Okay, can we have the lights dimmed to black?
The lights go down, and the room is now in complete darkness. All the sitters can see are some luminous dots painted on the various objects on the table. But using special cameras which can film in the dark, we can see the seance as if it's brightly lit. And later, the volunteers were able to see what had happened.
So this is how you all looked.
We're going to try and channel the energy, because we're a group, into the objects one at a time on the table to see what happens. But to make sure we stay as a group and act as a group, I want us actually to breathe as a group. So we're going to be breathing in through our nose for a count of 3, and out for 5 through the mouth. It will also help to clear our thoughts. You have to think of nothing else, just the objects on the table.
It all starts at the break of day. You move your feet and dance away. You feel so good as you walk down the street. You hear your favorite song. You play it all day long. 'Cause music is the only thing you need. Walkman, Walkman, love and hi-fi. Walkman, Walkman, takes me to the sky. Rock and roll's the teacher, you ain't been the preacher. Walkman, Walkman, Walkman. Walkman, Walkman. Walkman, Walkman. Kids from every nation love the new sensation. Walkman, Walkman, Slide out to the countryside. The weather's fine, the scene is right. You have a real good time and stay all day. We dance out in the sun and have a lot of fun. And who cares what the other people say? Walkman, Walkman, love that hi-fi. Walkman, Walkman, takes me to the sky. Kids from every nation love the new
trickery begins.
Breathe in. So we should be feeling nice and calm and relaxed. There are a number of objects on the table that you've all had a chance to look at. There was a ball, there was an accordion, a shaker, a bell. I want us to all concentrate on one image. Concentrate on the shaker.
He's reached under the chair now and picked up what's called a reaching rod, which is an extendable rod.
In for 3, out for 5. Work together as a group. Feel the person's energy next to you. Concentrate only on the shaker. Keep concentrating on it. Concentrate only on the shaker. That's very good. Keep it going. Keep the breathing going. Don't panic. It's all right. Just keep the breathing. Your heartbeat will rise, but it's all right if you just keep breathing. Keep the grip of the person next to you. If you feel unsure, close your eyes for a moment. The panic will pass, but it's all right. You're doing very well. It's only energy. Just breathe in for 3. Out for 5. Just the shaker. Imagine the shaker. That's good. Just visualize the shaker. Keep it on the shaker. That's very good. That's all right. You've done.
Our sitters' perceptions of what had gone on were interestingly at variance with what actually happened.
That's very good. That's all right.
Claire, there's quite a lot of movement next to you on that. You didn't suspect anything?
I didn't feel anything. Nothing. Makes you feel really stupid.
Now, in your mind's eye,
Whilst the sitters were distracted by the rattle, the medium's accomplice had made his entrance. And remember, it's still completely dark.
Focused on the table. We can see you picking up the straw hat. That's it, Marilyn. You're bringing it back towards yourself. You're taking it up to your... That's right, Marilyn. And you're going to put it on your head now. You feel it? It's a strong
People were startled by the seance effects, even though they were expecting things to happen.
The ideas you were getting in your head were actually very complicated to try and solve it, but it was also simple. It was just the easiest thing in the world.
Keep the focus on the ball. Keep the focus on the ball. Try and lift the ball. It's all right, Marilyn. Keep breathing. In for 3. Out.
Most people seem to think that the temperature had gone down in the studio.
It's getting very cold in here. The energy is very, very powerful.
This was pure suggestion. The air conditioning remained constant throughout the session.
So it really did feel like there was a change in temperature.
Yeah, definitely. It was cold.
It was cold. It was.
Is everyone okay? Wow.
No one suspected the most obvious culprit, Richard, the medium himself.
What role did Richard play in it all?
Well, he wasn't moving anything around. Anything like he's just.
No. So you didn't suspect him?
No.
Why didn't you suspect him?
He was tied to the chair.
Right.
And his voice was coming from a permanent position.
Yeah, his voice was coming from the same spot all the time, so it wasn't like if it moved and it was so dark, you'd know it.
Oh, that's interesting. You could locate sound in the dark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Richard Wiseman's experiment was part of his work as one of a number of scientists with an interest in researching the psychic phenomena that so many people are convinced exist.
I guess I could appreciate the thought that someday we might find a human ability heretofore unknown to us. I just doubt it has anything to do with bending spoons, breaking forks, or counting symbol cards with chickens. You may not have seen this, but everyone doing telekinesis on this film were using light-colored thread or fishing line or something. They've got this thread tied around their thumbs, and they hold their hands out like magicians, seeming to push objects around with their human energy field or chi. But they claim to be moving the objects with their minds. What point would the hands have been anyway? To provide flair? Seriously, that's probably the answer. What magician doesn't take care to get a really nice manicure? Moving your hands around like a model on Price is Right is a staple of magicians everywhere. Seriously, did those ladies learn from those flashy 60s and 70s magicians like Blackstone? Did ancient Egyptian magicians do the little zasp things with their jazz hands when they did the old cups and balls? I imagine it provides misdirection. You gotta be dexterous when palming things and playing with those shiny little sex toy balls like David Bowie in Labyrinth. Come on, who wouldn't be mesmerized by lovely palm-olive long-fingered Liberace hands while they gracefully pull a coin out of your ear? No wonder the stories about wishes gone wrong sometimes feature a severed hand in a velvet-lined box. The enchanted hand of Count Petrovi, Or a monkey paw. Jeez. Manos, the hands of fate is starting to look like it made some kind of sense. Who wants to make me a Manos Master Red Hands caftan I can wear next Halloween? Wait, you ask, what's Manos? Well, I envy the person who's about to embark on that adventure in film watching for the first time. Go rent it, watch it a la MST3K, you won't hate me. Or you will hate me. I swear. Manos, the hands of fate.